Like, if this is where the Democratic Party is going, where this democratic socialist, this obsession with Israel, with the Jew hating, with they don't believe in capitalism, no prisons. If this is where they're going, my vote is in play.
Okay.
And
I like to hear that.
It actually always has been. Every year, I don't make my decision by who has an R or a D. I actually always came to the conclusion that the Democrat was probably better.
Sure.
And voted for them.
Okay.
And Trump can't run again, and he'd be a little too exciting for me anyway. So it's either going to be you or Rubio.
What's up, everybody? Welcome to the channel. And today I want to talk about this interview that Bill Maher had with JD Vance. Now, they talked about a whole bunch of topics, but this one is going to have to do with elections. Now, as you can see, he gets into his vote being open to maybe vote for Republican in 2028 because the Democrats are going insane with socialism. And in this next part, the only thing that's keeping him from actually doing that is because Republicans aren't willing to admit when they lose elections. And he's talked about the 2020 election and also, my guess, what happened in 2022 with all the fraud that happened in those elections. And he's pretty much saying there was no fraud and you guys lost because y'all didn't have better ideas. I completely disagree. There's plenty of evidence showing that there was fraud. But anyway, JD Vance has a rebuttal to him. And I would say, in my opinion, JD Vance probably didn't convince Bill Maher to vote for the Republican Party, but I think there's a better chance in 2028 that Bill Maher might actually vote Republican because how nutty the Democrat Party has gotten. But let's go ahead and check out the clip.
Here's my deal breaker for your side. Okay. Under Trump, you guys have two outcomes that an election can be. Either we win or they cheated. That shit has to stop. And the person and that means the person who has to stop it would be you or Marco. Can you tell me you will do that? Will you bring us back to the middle, at least on that, where we concede elections, where it's not either one of those two options?
Okay, Bill. So this is where I'm probably going to lose you here, but here's
that happened about 8 minutes ago.
Before we get to what JD has to say to his remarks there, here's the thing. When it comes to 2020, there's plenty of evidence showing that that election was stolen from Donald Trump, especially in Arizona, Wisconsin, and Georgia. If you look into those three states, first thing, those three states were only won by about 10,000, 12,000 votes. Not only that, the amount of, let's say, impropriety when it comes to the chain of custody and stuff like that shows that these states were not doing proper chain of custody. Thus, those votes shouldn't have counted anyway. And instead of following the state law and federal law, they ignored it and went ahead and counted them anyway. And Bill Maher and Democrats aren't willing to admit that. And matter of fact, they try to say 60 court cases happened and you didn't win any of them. Here's the thing. Majority of those court cases were thrown out. The judge didn't even get to listen to the merits of the case. So how in the hell is that a win or a loss? It's not. What it is judges didn't want to get involved in an election, which I don't blame them because you know what would have happened, especially the way the left acts. And when it comes to conceding elections, the fact is Democrats don't always do it properly either. Don't get me wrong, they concede, but later on they'll say that he wasn't legitimately elected. Perfect example is what they did to Trump in 2016 and what they did to George Bush back in 2000. They have done that several times. Not only that, they have had people try to vote to not actually certified election on January 6th. They've done that back in 2000, 2004, and 2016. So it's nothing new for Democrats to do the same thing the Republicans do. It's the Republicans are more boisterous about it. And you had someone like Donald Trump who decided to not concede the election because he didn't believe he lost it. So in my opinion, Bill Maher is seeing this through one side instead of actually looking on both sides, because both sides do it. It's just that each side does it differently than the other.
Look, I don't think that we should not concede elections, but I don't think that's what's going on. I think that if you go back to the president's core argument, he was making an argument about problems that existed in 2020. And here's the problem that I'm most focused on. The president and I've talked a lot about this, and I think we share a perspective here, but set to the side the stuff that really gets you and your audience very angry about whether the count was legitimate in Georgia or Pennsylvania or any of these other states. Is it true that large technology companies, some of whom have financial interests that exist outside the United States of America, were they censoring information in the run-up to an election? And set to the side the stuff, again, the Georgia stuff, but
that was litigated. Dominion, the Fox News paid us.
I'm trying to make the more middle ground argument here. The biggest criticism I had of the 2020 election is that you had technology companies that were quite literally censoring negative information about the left and promoting negative information about the right. So in a fundamental sense, like if the First Amendment says that we have a free and open debate and then the American people judge based on that free and open debate, the sense in which I think the election in 2020 was rigged, I'm sorry, is that you had technology companies that were putting their thumb on the scale in a way that completely obliterated the real open exchange of ideas.
Well,
now, by the way,
all right, guys, what he's talking about right here is the Hunter Biden laptop. And the thing is, that thing was censored on Facebook. It was censored on Twitter, YouTube. It was censored everywhere where they wouldn't allow people to see it. Because the thing is, it was a scandal that could affect the 2020 election. They wanted to make sure that their guy, which was Joe Biden at the time, won the presidency. So they did that. Another thing they also did is they promoted the idea of the 51 Intel Agency letter that came out where you had all these former heads of CIA and other intelligence agencies saying that the Hunter Biden laptop was a Russian disinformation plant and it wasn't real. And they pushed that, right? And they pushed anyone who would actually talk about that and pushed it, it's right. And the reason they did that is to convince people that Trump and the Russians are working together. And this is a way for them to actually affect the 2020 election to make sure Trump would win it. And about 17%, if you look at the polls, 17% of people bought this and voted for Biden because of it. And a lot of those people said if they known what they knew a year or 2 years later, that this laptop was real, it was Hunter Biden's, and everything in it actually incriminates the Bidens, they said they would have voted for Donald Trump, not Joe Biden. So, in my opinion, JD Vance is 100% correct. That's what rigged that election. Don't get me wrong. There's other stuff that happened as well when it comes to election laws being changed because of COVID and stuff like that. That's obviously something that's legitimate and something that Bill Maher and others aren't willing to talk about because they know whenever you do talk about that, you're right. The fact is, when you change laws in mid of election, and not only that, you do it through executive fiat, which a lot of these states did that in order to combat COVID. And what it does is it actually rigs election for one side compared to the other. And that's exactly what happened in 2020. And someone like Bill Maher, smart enough to know that, he just completely ignores it because his side won.
It didn't happen in 2024, but it happened in 2020, and it was a problem.
Well, you're going to get a big pat on the back when you go back to the White House. All right.
Well, obviously, there's people in the crowd at the studio that actually agrees with JD Vance, and I agree with him as well. Don't get me wrong. This, what happened in 2020 was widespread. It was all over the place where you saw a bunch of fraud and stuff like that happened. And people like Bill Maher and others, they ignore that. They do not look into it. They just assume you're a conspiracy theorist and they completely ignore you without even talking to you. And I think that is dangerous, in my opinion. That is someone that is naive and that likes echo chambers. And an echo chamber is actually what causes the division in the United States, in my opinion. It's a psyop. The fact is we have more in common than we have not in common. And unfortunately, you have a psyop going on between Republicans and Democrats. They want to divide the country because the country's divided. Guess what? You can't have like mass protests. You can't have actual real change in the United States without having unity with the people versus the government. And right now, we don't have that. And that's unfortunate. But guys, I hope y'all enjoyed the video. Please hit that like button, comment, and share this out to everybody.